The streets of New York were brighter than usual that week. Posters and banners announced the upcoming annual charity gala, an event that had become the talk of the city every year. It was not only about raising money for good causes but also about shining in society. Business leaders, actors, politicians, and people with well-known names filled the hall with luxury and style. In one corner of the city, inside a tall office building, Sarah Miller sat in her father's office, helping him go through the long guest list. Sarah was in her mid-20s, sharp and confident, raised in comfort and privilege. Her father, Robert Miller, was a respected businessman and one of the main sponsors of the gala. Sarah had attended the gala since she was a teenager, and to her, it was always the most important night of the year. Sarah loved the gowns, the chandeliers, the music, and the way photographers captured every smile. To her, the gala was a place to shine, to be noticed, to prove her family's place in society. She believed the event was for people of a certain level, and she often reminded herself that only the most successful names should be there. As she flipped through the list, she read names she expected: senators, CEOs, television hosts, and well-known doctors. But then, her eyes stopped at one line. Michael Johnson, janitor. Her eyebrows narrowed. She reread the name, confused and almost annoyed. She looked at her father. "Dad, there must be a mistake. Why is this name here? Who is Michael Johnson?" Robert leaned back in his chair and folded his hands. His face showed no surprise. "There is no mistake. Michael is invited." Sarah let out a laugh, though it was sharp and nervous. "Invited? Dad, he's the janitor from your building. I see him sometimes pushing his cart, sweeping the lobby, fixing the lights. How can a janitor be on this list? This gala is not for people like him. He won't fit in." Her father's voice was calm but firm. "Sarah, every person has worth. You must never forget that." Sarah shook her head. "But the gala is about showing the best of society. Imagine the looks on people's faces when they see a janitor in a suit walking through the ballroom. They'll laugh. They'll whisper. And they'll question why we allowed it." Robert sighed, remembering something his daughter had forgotten. "Michael is not just a janitor. He has done more for this family than you realize." Sarah frowned. "What are you talking about? I don't understand." Her father didn't explain. He only said, "One day you will know why he deserves to be there." But Sarah wasn't satisfied. She couldn't understand why her father, a man who was always careful about appearances, would risk the family's image by inviting someone like Michael to such a high-profile event. That night, as Sarah left the office, she passed the janitor himself. Michael was in his late 50s, tall, with tired but kind eyes. His uniform was simple, and his hands carried the marks of years of hard work. He nodded politely at Sarah as he pushed his cart past her. Sarah returned the nod, but inside her mind, she was unsettled. How could this man possibly attend the gala? She thought. What connection could he have to us? Michael, on the other hand, had no idea about Sarah's feelings. He had received the invitation quietly and kept it folded in his pocket. To him, the gala was not about glamour or showing off. It was about gratitude. He didn't plan to shine or be noticed, he only wanted to be present because of something that happened many years ago, something Sarah didn't remember. That night, as Sarah sat in her room looking at her gown choices for the gala, her thoughts returned again and again to Michael's name. She couldn't let it go. It bothered her like a stone in her shoe. She decided she had to do something about it. She would not allow a janitor to embarrass her family in front of the whole city. What Sarah didn't know was that Michael carried a story inside him, a story that belonged to her as much as it belonged to him. It was a story of a night long ago, a night when a young girl's life had hung in the balance and when a man, who now pushed a janitor's cart, had stepped in to save her. But for now, Sarah only saw him as the janitor who did not belong in her world. And so, with determination, she began to plan how to stop him from attending the gala. Little did she know, by trying to keep him away, she was about to uncover the truth that would change everything she thought she knew about her own life. The following morning, Sarah walked into her father's office again. Robert was busy with phone calls and papers, finalizing the last-minute details for the gala. Sarah, however, had only one thought in her mind: Michael Johnson. She could not get over the fact that a janitor's name was placed on the same list as famous actors, senators, and wealthy business leaders. To her, it felt unfair, almost insulting to the event. She believed people would laugh not only at Michael but also at her family for allowing it. "Dad," Sarah said firmly, standing near his desk. "I think you need to reconsider that invitation. It will not look good for us. Michael doesn't belong there." Robert looked at her over his glasses. "Sarah, we are not going to remove his name. I told you, he has his reasons to be there." "But what reason could there be?" she insisted. "He sweeps the floors, he fixes leaks, he cleans up after events. That's what he does. You can't compare him with senators or business leaders. If people see him, they'll think we've lost our standards." Robert shook his head and returned to his papers. "Sometimes standards blind us, Sarah. The gala is about charity, about giving everyone a chance to be seen. Michael deserves it. That's all you need to know." Sarah felt her father would not change his mind. That left her with only one choice: she would have to handle it herself. Later that day, Sarah visited her best friend, Emma Parker, who was also attending the gala. Emma came from a wealthy family too, though she was gentler in her opinions than Sarah. The two sat in a cafe, sipping coffee. "Emma," Sarah whispered, leaning forward, "you won't believe who's on the guest list this year. Michael, the janitor from Dad's office." Emma raised her eyebrows. "Really? That's surprising. But maybe it's a nice gesture. You know, to include someone ordinary." Sarah frowned. "Nice? It's going to be embarrassing. People will wonder why a janitor is sitting at the same tables as CEOs. I have to stop him from coming." Emma hesitated. "Sarah, maybe your dad has a reason. Maybe Michael did something important. I don't think your dad would invite him without thought." But Sarah was not convinced. "No, Emma. If Dad won't remove him, I'll talk to Michael myself." The next afternoon, Sarah found Michael in the lobby of the building. He was polishing the marble floor, his hands steady and practiced. His uniform was neat, though worn from years of use. "Michael," Sarah said politely but firmly. He stood up slowly, wiping his hands on a cloth. "Yes, Miss Miller." Sarah crossed her arms. "I saw your name on the guest list for the gala. I think there's been some mistake." Michael looked at her calmly, his expression unreadable. "No mistake, miss. I received an invitation from your father." "Yes, but," Sarah hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "This event is very formal. It's for a certain group of people. I'm not sure it's the right place for you." Michael studied her for a moment. His eyes were kind but carried something deeper, something she could not understand. I appreciate your concern, but I will be attending. Your father invited me, and I accepted. Sarah felt frustration rise in her chest. She expected him to back down, to admit he didn't belong. Instead, his calmness unsettled her even more. Well, she said sharply, I hope you understand this is a high-class event. People expect a certain standard. Just, don't make it awkward for anyone. Michael gave a small smile, though his voice was serious. Miss Miller, sometimes people don't see the truth about others until the right moment. One day, you will understand why I'm there. Sarah blinked, confused by his words. But before she could reply, Michael returned to his work, quietly polishing the floor as if the conversation never happened. That night, Sarah paced in her room. His words echoed in her mind. One day, you will understand why I'm there. What did he mean by that? Did her father know something she didn't? She remembered being a little girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old, but most of those memories were blurred. Her mother had passed away when she was young, and her father rarely spoke about the past. Could Michael have been part of something back then? Still, Sarah brushed the thought away. To her, Michael was just a janitor, nothing more. And she could not allow him to stand in the ballroom among the city's elite. She decided she would find a way to keep him from attending. Her plan began to form. If she could speak to the event coordinators or somehow convince Michael he would feel out of place, maybe he would step back on his own. She imagined the laughter, the whispers, the looks people might give him, and she felt even more determined. What Sarah didn't realize was that every step she took to push Michael away was bringing her closer to the truth. The truth about a stormy night years ago, when a man risked everything to save a little girl's life. And that man was no senator, no CEO, no celebrity. He was Michael, the janitor she believed did not belong. The days moved quickly, and the gala was only a week away. The city was full of talk about it, who would be there, what the decorations would look like, and which charity would receive the most attention. Sarah, however, was not thinking about gowns or music. Her mind was still stuck on one name, Michael Johnson. Every time she pictured the ballroom filled with important guests, she imagined him standing awkwardly in the middle, drawing confused stares. She felt a rush of embarrassment just thinking about it. But her father refused to explain more. And Michael's calm words, "One day, you will understand," only deepened her confusion. That afternoon, Sarah visited her grandmother, Margaret Miller, who lived in a quiet house on the edge of the city. Margaret was a gentle woman in her 70s, wise and kind, someone Sarah often turned to for comfort. "Grandma," Sarah began as they sat together with tea, "something strange is happening. Dad invited a janitor from his building to the gala. His name is Michael Johnson. Do you know him?" Margaret froze for a moment. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed her teacup down. "Michael Johnson," she repeated softly, as if the name carried weight. "Yes," Sarah said quickly. "Do you know him? Why would Dad invite someone like him?" Margaret looked at her granddaughter with eyes that seemed full of both sadness and gratitude. "Sarah, there are things you don't know. Things about your childhood. Your father must believe it is time for you to understand." Sarah leaned closer. "Understand what?" "Grandma, please tell me." But Margaret shook her head. "It is not my story to tell. One day, you will see for yourself. For now, all I will say is this: show kindness to Michael. You owe him more than you realize." Sarah felt her heart beat faster. Her grandmother's words confused her even more. Owe him? How could I owe him? He's just a janitor. Margaret gave her a sad smile. Titles don't matter, child. Sometimes the people we look down on are the very ones who lift us up in life. Sarah left her grandmother's house restless. Her curiosity was growing, but so was her determination to keep Michael away from the gala. She wanted answers, yet no one was giving them to her. The next day, she decided to ask her father again. She found him in his office, busy as usual. "Dad," she said firmly, "I need to know the truth. Why is Michael invited? Grandma hinted there's something I don't know. What happened?" Robert looked at her for a long time before answering. His face grew serious. "Sarah, some memories are painful. I did not want to bring them back until you were ready. But soon, you will know. At the gala, you will understand." Sarah's frustration grew. Why at the gala? Why not now? Her father's eyes softened. Because sometimes the truth has the greatest impact when revealed at the right moment. Trust me, Sarah. Michael deserves to be there. But Sarah shook her head, unwilling to wait. That evening, Sarah decided to take matters into her own hands again. She returned to the building and found Michael in the storage room, organizing cleaning supplies. "Michael," she began, her voice sharp, "why are you going to the gala? Do you enjoy making this difficult for me?" Michael looked up from his work, calm as ever. "I am not trying to make it difficult for you, Miss Miller. I was invited, and I accepted." Sarah stepped closer. "But why? Why you? What's so important about you that my father, of all people, would put your name next to senators and businessmen?" Michael was silent for a moment. His eyes held something heavy, almost sorrowful. Then he said quietly, "Miss Miller, there are things you do not remember. But your father does. And I do. That is why I will be there." Sarah frowned. "What do you mean, things I don't remember?" Michael looked down at the floor, avoiding her eyes. "It is not my place to tell you. But when the time comes, you will know." Sarah's anger flared. She hated secrets, especially when she was the one left out. "You speak in riddles, Michael. Do you know how humiliating it will be if you show up and people laugh? Do you care about that at all?" Michael met her gaze at last. His voice was steady, but his words cut deep. "Miss Miller, I have faced worse than laughter. If people laugh at me, it will not matter. What matters is the truth. And that truth is tied to your life." Sarah was left speechless. She opened her mouth but no words came out. Michael turned back to his work, ending the conversation. That night, Sarah lay in bed unable to sleep. Her grandmother's warning, her father's silence, and Michael's mysterious words all swirled in her mind. You owe him more than you realize. Things you don't remember. That truth is tied to your life. What could it mean? She searched her memories, but her early childhood was a blur. She remembered playing in the garden, holding her mother's hand before she passed away, and visiting the park with her father. But there were gaps, long stretches of time she couldn't recall. Her chest tightened as she wondered, was there something in my past that I don't know about? Still, her pride pushed those questions aside. She told herself Michael was trying to make himself look important, and her father was too soft-hearted to stop him. She convinced herself that the gala was no place for him, no matter what secrets he held. But deep down, a small voice whispered that Michael's presence might not be as simple as she thought. And as the gala drew closer, Sarah's determination to stop him grew stronger without realizing that every step was bringing her closer to the night when the truth would finally be revealed. The week of the gala arrived, and the city grew even busier. Shops displayed elegant gowns in their windows, men tailored their suits, and restaurants prepared menus for the after-parties. Everyone who was someone looked forward to being there. But inside Sarah's heart, excitement was replaced with unease. She still could not accept that Michael Johnson, a janitor, was going to stand in the middle of the ballroom. The thought made her restless. One evening, as she walked through the building lobby, she noticed Michael standing by the large glass doors. His cart was beside him, but he was not working. He was looking outside at the busy street, his eyes lost in thought. Sarah hesitated before approaching. She wanted to ask him again, to push him harder for answers. But something about his posture stopped her. There was a heaviness in the way he stood, as though the weight of many years rested on his shoulders. Still, she gathered her courage. "Michael," she said softly. He turned, offering a small polite smile. "Miss Miller. Why do you keep talking in puzzles?" Sarah asked directly. "You say I will understand, that the truth is tied to my life. What truth? Why won't you just tell me?" Michael looked at her with tired eyes. "Because it is not my story to tell. I promised your father that he would be the one to explain. But when the moment comes, you will see." Sarah crossed her arms. "Do you realize how frustrating this is? Everyone keeps speaking in hints. My grandmother, my father, and now you. I feel like the only person who doesn't know the truth, and it's about me." Michael sighed. His hands tightened around the handle of his cart. "Sometimes, Miss Miller, the past is hidden because it carries pain. But no matter how far you run, the past always waits. And when it is revealed, it changes everything." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. His words carried a weight she could not ignore. But before she could ask more, he picked up his cart and returned to his work, leaving her in silence. That night, Sarah spoke again with her father. She was tired of secrets. "Dad," she said at dinner, "I can't take it anymore. What happened in the past? Why is Michael so important? Grandma said I owe him something. What does that mean?" Robert placed his fork down and looked at his daughter. His face grew pale, as though old memories had returned. "You were very young, Sarah. Too young to remember." There was a night, he stopped himself and shook his head. "No, not yet. Please, trust me. The gala will explain everything." "But why the gala?" she pressed. Robert's voice softened. "Because the truth deserves witnesses. And Michael deserves honor, not just quiet thanks." Sarah's confusion deepened. Why would a janitor deserve honor? What had he done that connected to her life so strongly? As the days passed, Sarah found herself watching Michael differently. She noticed the way he greeted people politely, even when they ignored him. She saw how he worked late into the night, fixing broken pipes, changing light bulbs, and making the building shine. His work went unnoticed, yet he never complained. Still, her pride would not let her admit he belonged at the gala. She thought of the stares, the whispers, and how people would question her family. The fear of embarrassment continued to grow stronger than her curiosity. So she made a new plan. If she could not convince her father or Michael to withdraw, perhaps she could make Michael feel out of place at the gala. She began to imagine ways to remind him he didn't belong, to pressure him into staying home. But deep inside, guilt tugged at her. Something in Michael's eyes told her he carried a story of sacrifice, not pride. And though she tried to ignore it, the feeling stayed with her. 2 nights before the gala, Sarah had a dream. She was a little girl again, standing in a dark place. She could hear thunder, rain, and her own frightened cries. She remembered a strong pair of arms lifting her, carrying her to safety. She couldn't see the face of the man holding her, but she remembered his voice, "You're safe now. Don't be afraid." She woke up with her heart pounding. The dream felt so real, as if it had been a memory buried deep inside her. Could it be connected to Michael? The thought unsettled her. She tried to shake it off, telling herself it was just her imagination. Yet part of her wondered if the dream was a piece of the past her family refused to talk about. The next day, Sarah went to see her grandmother again. "Grandma, I dreamed about someone saving me when I was small. Was that real?" Margaret's eyes softened. "Dreams often carry truths from our hearts, child. What you saw may not be imagination. It may be your memory trying to return." Sarah grew impatient. "Then why won't anyone tell me the whole story?" Margaret touched her hand gently. "Because your father believes you need to see it, not just hear it. At the gala, everything will become clear." Sarah left with more questions than answers. But she also carried a quiet fear inside her. What if Michael was more than just a janitor? What if her whole view of him and of herself was about to change? And as the final preparations for the gala began, Sarah's determination to stop him wavered for the first time. She still felt ashamed of the idea of a janitor walking among the elite. Yet a small voice whispered that pushing him away might mean pushing away the truth she had been waiting for all along. The long-awaited night finally arrived. The city glittered with lights, and the ballroom at the Grand Hotel stood ready, decorated with golden chandeliers, crystal glasses, and velvet curtains. A red carpet stretched across the entrance as photographers waited to capture the arrivals. Inside her room, Sarah Miller looked at herself in the mirror. Her gown shimmered under the light, her hair perfectly styled, her jewelry sparkling. She looked every bit the daughter of Robert Miller, one of the evening's main hosts. Yet, deep inside, she was restless. The thought of seeing Michael Johnson, the janitor, among the guests filled her with anxiety. She had tried everything, talking to her father, questioning her grandmother, even confronting Michael himself. But nothing had worked. Tonight, she had no choice but to face the truth. "Sarah, are you ready?" Robert's voice called from outside her door. She opened it with a practiced smile. "Yes, Dad." Robert looked at her with pride. "You look beautiful. Tonight will be a night to remember." Sarah forced a smile, though her heart whispered, "Yes, but for the wrong reasons." As the cars began to arrive, the ballroom filled with the city's most powerful and admired people. Famous actors, senators, and wealthy donors entered, their names announced by the staff. The air buzzed with excitement as music played softly in the background. Sarah walked beside her father, greeting guests with grace, though her eyes kept searching the entrance. She dreaded the moment when Michael would walk in. Then, it happened. The doors opened, and Michael Johnson stepped inside. He was no longer in his janitor's uniform. He wore a simple but well-fitted black suit, his shoes polished, his hair neatly combed. He carried himself with quiet dignity, his eyes calm, his step steady. For a moment, the room fell silent. People noticed him not because he looked out of place, but because no one expected to see him there. A few whispers began, small and sharp, like the rustling of paper. Sarah's cheeks burned. She wanted to disappear. Michael walked toward the crowd, nodding politely at those who looked his way. He did not seem nervous. Instead, he looked as though he belonged not to the wealth or fame of the room, but to a truth greater than appearances. "Who is that man?" a senator's wife whispered loudly. "A janitor," someone else replied softly. "From Robert Miller's office." Sarah's stomach turned. She glanced at her father, waiting for him to react. But Robert stood tall, his expression calm. He even stepped forward to greet Michael with a handshake. "Welcome, Michael," Robert said warmly, loud enough for people nearby to hear. Michael bowed his head slightly. "Thank you, Mr. Miller. It's an honor." Sarah clenched her hands. She couldn't understand why her father treated him with such respect. Didn't he see how people whispered? Emma, her best friend, appeared at her side. "Sarah," she whispered, "he doesn't look awkward. He looks important." Sarah turned to her sharply. "He's not important. He's a janitor." Emma gave her a gentle look. "Then why is your father treating him like a guest of honor?" Sarah had no answer. The evening went on. Speeches were made, music played, and waiters carried trays of food. But Sarah couldn't enjoy any of it. Her eyes followed Michael wherever he went. He spoke little, staying on the side of the room, but whenever her father passed him, he gave him a nod of respect. Finally, the time came for Robert Miller to take the stage. The lights dimmed slightly as he walked to the microphone. The crowd grew silent. "Ladies and gentlemen," Robert began, "thank you for being here tonight. This gala has always been about generosity, kindness, and remembering that every person matters." Sarah listened, her heart racing. She knew her father well. He was preparing to say something big. Robert's voice grew stronger. "Tonight, I want to honor a man who is here with us. Many of you know him as a janitor. But what most of you do not know is that he once saved a life, my daughter's life." The room gasped. Sarah froze. Her breath caught in her throat. Robert turned and looked at Michael. "Years ago, when Sarah was just a child, there was an accident. A fire broke out in our home. I was away on business, and my wife could not reach Sarah in time. It was Michael, working nearby, who risked his life to save her. Without him, my daughter would not be here tonight." The room was silent. Every eye turned toward Michael. Some people looked shocked, others moved. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. A memory flickered, the dream she had only nights before. Thunder, fear, strong arms carrying her. "You're safe now. Don't be afraid." Tears stung her eyes as she realized it wasn't just a dream. It was real. Michael was the man who had saved her. Applause filled the ballroom. People stood, clapping for Michael. For once, the whispers were gone. Instead, there was respect, even admiration. Sarah, however, stood frozen. Shame washed over her. All this time, she had tried to keep him away, thinking he was beneath her. Yet he had been the reason she was alive. She lowered her head, unable to meet his eyes. Michael stood quietly, his hands folded in front of him. He did not bask in the attention. He simply nodded humbly, as if the applause belonged not to him, but to the truth itself. And in that moment, Sarah's world shifted. The gala she thought would bring her pride had instead brought her the greatest lesson of her life. The ballroom continued to echo with applause, but to Sarah, every sound felt heavy on her chest. She stood frozen, her hands trembling, her eyes on the floor. The truth her father had revealed struck her harder than she ever imagined. Michael saved me. All these years, I never knew. And I tried to stop him from being here. The shame was unbearable. Every time she remembered her sharp words to Michael telling him he didn't belong, warning him not to make things awkward, her stomach turned. Her father's voice brought her back. Tonight, we honor not only a man who risked his life but also a reminder that true worth is not measured by titles or wealth, but by courage and kindness. The guests applauded again, many even standing to show their respect for Michael. He gave a small nod, his eyes lowering in humility. He did not smile proudly or step forward to claim the moment. Instead, he stood quietly, as though he would rather disappear into the crowd. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She wanted to run to him, to apologize, to thank him. But something inside her held her back. Guilt pressed her down, whispering, "You don't deserve to speak to him. Not after how you treated him." The evening went on with music and dancing, but Sarah couldn't enjoy any of it. She stayed near the edge of the room, her gaze following Michael as he stood near one of the tall windows. Guests now approached him politely, shaking his hand, thanking him. Some even asked him about that night, though he answered only with short, humble words. Emma found Sarah standing alone. "Why are you hiding?" she asked softly. Sarah's voice cracked. "Emma, I tried to stop him. I told him he didn't belong here. And all along, he was the reason I'm alive." Emma touched her arm gently. "Sarah, you didn't know. You were blind, but now you see. Don't waste this chance, go talk to him." Sarah wiped her eyes quickly, afraid of ruining her makeup. "What if he hates me? What if he thinks I'm ungrateful?" Emma shook her head. "Look at him. Do you see hate in his eyes? He's not here to shame you. He's here because he was invited with honor. Go." Sarah swallowed hard and nodded. Slowly, she walked across the ballroom toward Michael. Each step felt heavier than the last. When she reached him, she hesitated, her voice almost a whisper. "Michael." He turned, his calm eyes meeting hers. "Miss Miller." She bit her lip, unsure where to begin. I don't know what to say. I just found out what you did. You saved me. All these years, I never knew." Michael gave a small nod. "You were too young to remember. That night was difficult. Your father and I agreed not to burden you with it until you were older." Tears stung her eyes. "But I treated you so badly. I tried to stop you from coming here. I thought you didn't belong. And the truth is, I didn't deserve to stand here, not after the way I spoke to you." Michael's expression softened. "Miss Miller, you don't need to carry guilt. You did not know. Sometimes we only see the surface of people. It takes time to look deeper. You are seeing now, that is what matters." Sarah's voice trembled. "But I hurt you with my words." Michael shook his head gently. "Words can hurt, yes. But forgiveness is stronger. And I forgive you." Sarah's tears finally fell, and she quickly wiped them away. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you not just for saving me back then, but for forgiving me now." Michael gave her a kind smile. "You don't need to thank me. I did what anyone should do. A life is precious, your life was precious. And seeing you alive and well now is all the thanks I need. For the first time that night, Sarah felt a strange warmth replace her shame. She realized Michael had never wanted attention or praise. He simply wanted her to live her life, even if she never knew his part in it. "Can I ask you something?" Sarah said softly. "Yes." "Why didn't you tell me before? Why keep it a secret for so long?" Michael looked out the window, his eyes distant. "Because true kindness is not done for recognition. It is done because it is right. Your father and I agreed that you should grow without carrying the weight of that night. But now, it is time you knew." Sarah nodded slowly, her heart heavy with both gratitude and respect. The music swelled in the background, and laughter filled the air as guests continued to enjoy the night. But for Sarah, the gala no longer felt like a place of pride or status. It had become something more, a place of truth, of lessons, of humility. As she stood beside Michael, she realized how wrong she had been about what mattered. Expensive gowns, shining chandeliers, and famous names meant nothing compared to the quiet strength of a man who had risked everything for her life. She whispered again, more firmly this time, "Thank you, Michael. From my heart." Michael gave her another nod, his eyes kind. "You are welcome, Sarah." And for the first time that evening, she allowed herself to smile, not the polished smile she gave photographers, but a real, genuine smile, born from gratitude and newfound respect. The gala was in full swing. The room glimmered with golden lights, and the city's elite enjoyed music, laughter, and the taste of fine food. But for Sarah Miller, the night had transformed into something far greater than fashion or social status. Standing beside Michael Johnson, she felt a quiet peace she had never known. The weight of her pride had lifted, replaced by gratitude, humility, and a newfound understanding of life. Sarah thought about all the moments she had wasted judging him. She remembered the sharp words she had said, the times she had doubted his worth, and the efforts she had made to keep him away from the gala. And now, in the glow of the ballroom lights, she saw the man himself not as a janitor, but as a hero. Her father, Robert, approached with a warm smile. "Sarah, I see you found him." She nodded, her eyes moist with tears. "Yes, Dad. I understand now. I don't even know how to thank him enough." Robert placed a hand on her shoulder. "Gratitude doesn't always need words. Sometimes, it is shown in respect, in acknowledgement, and in carrying the lesson forward." Sarah looked at Michael. He stood quietly, not expecting praise or attention. Yet the room now regarded him differently. No one whispered about his job or appearance. Instead, they respected him for courage, for selflessness, and for humility. As the evening continued, Sarah and Michael found themselves walking to a quiet corner of the ballroom. Away from the crowd, the lights softened, and for the first time, they could speak without interruptions. "Michael," Sarah began, her voice trembling, "I have so many questions. But first, I just want to say I am sorry. I judged you. I tried to stop you from being here. And all this time, you saved my life." Michael gave her a gentle smile. "There is no need to apologize, Sarah. You didn't know. And even if you had, you were a child. Your heart now understands the truth, and that is what matters." Sarah's gaze fell to the floor. "I was so focused on appearances, on what people thought. I thought this gala was about who looked important. But it's not, is it? It's about people who make a difference, even quietly." Michael nodded. "Exactly. True impact is often unseen, unnoticed. but it changes lives all the same. Sarah felt a deep gratitude rise in her heart. She realized she had spent too much of her life worrying about status, clothes, and recognition, while missing what truly mattered: courage, kindness, and sacrifice. Later, the awards part of the gala began. While speeches were made and donations announced, Sarah noticed Michael standing by her father, quietly observing. He was not interested in applause or attention. He had already received the greatest recognition: the knowledge that his actions had mattered, that a life had been saved. Sarah walked toward him again. "Michael, will you let me help in any way I can? Not just tonight, but anything you need. I want to make up for how I treated you." Michael shook his head gently. "You don't owe me anything, Sarah. The life you live is the reward. But your kindness, now that you understand, is appreciated." Tears rolled down Sarah's cheeks. She realized that gratitude was not just words or gestures: it was understanding, acknowledgement, and carrying lessons forward. The gala eventually drew to a close. Guests began to leave, talking and laughing. But for Sarah, the night was far from over. She stayed beside Michael, her heart full of respect and admiration. "Tonight changed me," she whispered. "Not because of the gowns, or the lights, or the speeches. But because of you, Michael. You taught me what really matters." Michael smiled softly. "Sometimes it takes time to see, Sarah. But you saw it tonight. That is what matters." Sarah looked around the now emptying ballroom, filled with stars and chandeliers. She realized that the world had not changed. The glitter and glamour were still there. But her eyes had changed. She saw people differently now, valued courage over status, and kindness over appearances. Her father joined her one last time. "Sarah, I am proud of you. You have learned one of life's most important lessons tonight. Respect, gratitude, and humility are more valuable than anything money or fame can buy." Sarah smiled, tears in her eyes. "I understand now, Dad. And I won't forget." Michael, quietly observing, gave a nod of approval. The man who had once risked everything to save a little girl now stood humbly beside her, and she finally saw him as he truly was: a hero, a guide, and a reminder that one act of courage can change a life forever. And for Sarah Miller, the gala was no longer just a night of luxury. It became a night of revelation, gratitude, and transformation: a night she would carry in her heart for the rest of her life. As she walked out of the ballroom, holding her father's hand, she glanced at Michael one last time. A soft smile passed between them, full of understanding and respect. In that moment, Sarah realized that true honor does not come from wealth or position, but from the courage to do what is right, the humility to forgive, and the grace to accept the lessons life gives. The gala had ended, but a greater story had begun: a story of gratitude, understanding, and the quiet power of a life saved.